March 15, 1944. Japanese Naval Intelligence Headquarters, Oda Communications Unit, Japan. Commander Itsuzo Kurihara studied the intercepted message, his third cup of strong tea left untouched beside him. For 18 straight hours, he and his team, Japan's most skilled code specialists, had been trying to interpret what appeared to be U.S. Marine Corps tactical radio traffic from the Marshall Islands campaign. Yet the noises coming through their receivers resisted every decoding method they knew. These were not meaningless sounds. Their rhythm indicated organized military communication, timing that always came before American assaults, message links matching operational directives, and radio frequencies aligned with Marine Corps habits. But the speech itself remained completely indecipherable, unrelated to anything found in their extensive archives of Allied communication systems. Kurihara oversaw one of the most advanced signals intelligence operations on Earth. The Oda installation, located 20 miles outside Tokyo, employed 500 workers, fielded 118 radio receivers, and operated 20 direction-finding units. His cryptographers had successfully cracked American diplomatic cables, British naval signals, and several Army ciphers. They had even broken the U.S. State Department's Purple Code before Pearl Harbor, gaining vital intelligence during the early years of the war. Yet now, these Marine transmissions represented a total collapse of Japan's cryptographic capabilities. 3 years into the conflict, after unraveling dozens of Allied codes, Japan's brightest codebreakers could not figure out even the simplest patterns within these strange messages. What Kurihara did not realize, and what no Japanese intelligence officer would understand until long after the war, was that they were hearing the only modern military code that was never broken. The story began far from the Pacific battlefields, in the American Southwest, where the Navajo people had preserved a language unlike any other. Known as Dine Bizad, the Navajo language belonged to the Athabascan family and had around 170,000 speakers in 1940, almost all living on the 27,000 square mile reservation spanning Arizona, New Mexico, Utah, and Colorado. The linguistic features that baffled Japanese codebreakers had developed over thousands of years. Navajo is fundamentally verb-based, with actions described through complex prefix combinations that can form millions of possible forms. The language uses 4 tones: high, low, rising, and falling, each of which completely changes a word's meaning. A slight mispronunciation can make an entire sentence impossible to understand. Its phonology includes sounds absent from Japanese, English, and most languages, ejective consonants, a voiceless lateral fricative, glottalized sounds, and nasal vowels. For native Japanese speakers accustomed to only 5 vowel sounds, distinguishing these phonemes was nearly impossible. Philip Johnston recognized the military potential of this linguistic stronghold. Born in 1892 to a Protestant missionary on the Navajo reservation, Johnston grew up fluent in Navajo, one of fewer than 30 non-Navajos in the world with that ability. By age 9 he was translating his father's sermons, by 15 he was interpreting for Navajo delegations in Washington, even meeting President Theodore Roosevelt. After Pearl Harbor in December 1941, Johnston read that the U.S. Army had used Comanche speakers during training exercises in Louisiana. The Choctaw had served similarly in World War I, but those attempts were improvised and limited. Johnston envisioned something unprecedented, a formal, structured military code built from the Navajo language, both impossible to break and perfectly suited for fast, modern battlefield communication. On February 28, 1942, Johnston presented his idea to Major General Clayton Vogel at Camp Elliott near San Diego. The demonstration stunned the officers. For Navajos from Los Angeles transmitted test messages, and Marine officers compared their speed to standard equipment. The Navajo messages were delivered in 20 seconds, while the M209 cipher machine required 30 minutes for the same content. General Vogel approved a pilot program. On May 4, 1942, 29 Navajo recruits were sworn in at Fort Wingate, New Mexico. These men, including Chester Nez, Carl Gorman, Lloyd Oliver, and John Benally, came from different parts of the reservation. Many had attended government boarding schools where speaking Navajo was forbidden and punished. Others were traditional sheep herders, who rarely left their ancestral lands. At Camp Elliott, they worked in a locked, guarded building for 8 weeks, creating a military code within their native language. The task was monumental. Develop terminology for concepts that didn't exist in Navajo, create an alphabet system, ensure memorability and expandability. They built the code through cultural logic. A submarine became bestow, iron. Fish swimming beneath the surface. A battleship was lot whale, the ocean's largest creature. Fighter planes were hummingbirds darting through air. Bombers were show, buzzards circling before descending. The alphabet required special creativity. Each letter needed multiple Navajo words to prevent frequency analysis. The letter E, most common in English, received 4 alternatives: Z, elk, Anna, itir, hair, aa, ear. Code talkers would randomly alternate between options, destroying any patterns. They developed 211 initial terms, memorizing everything perfectly. No code books could risk capture. Chester Ness recalled, "We drilled endlessly. A mistake could cost lives. In our culture, words have power. Speaking correctly was sacred." The code's first test came at Guadalcanal in August 1942. 15 code talkers landed with the 1st Marine Division. The Japanese had expected the invasion, having decoded other Allied communications. But suddenly Marine tactical messages became incomprehensible. At Japanese 8th Fleet headquarters in Rabble, intelligence officers scrambled to understand these transmissions. Lieutenant Kazuo Yamada, educated at Stanford before the war, reported, "The sounds are structured like language with consistent patterns, but it matches nothing. Not English, French, Dutch, Spanish, any Philippine dialect, any Chinese dialect. Completely alien." The Japanese response was systematic. They assigned top CRYP analysts, recorded hundreds of hours on wax cylinders, applied every analytical technique. They consulted university linguists, even Buddhist monks who studied ancient languages. Nothing worked. On November 8, 1942, code talker Chester Nez transmitted artillery coordinates that destroyed a Japanese machine gun nest. The 14-second transmission was intercepted, but remained meaningless noise to Japanese operators. Within minutes, American shells fell precisely on target. Colonel Haruo Kanuma, intelligence officer for the 17th Army, wrote, "The Americans have deployed a code that defeats every attempt. We can no longer anticipate attacks. We are fighting blind." Joe Kilumia, a Navajo soldier captured at Baton in April 1942, became Japan's best hope for breaking the code. Though fluent in Navajo, he had no knowledge of the military code being developed. When Japanese cryptographers began intercepting Navajo transmissions, they brought Kayumiya to the Ana interrogation center. They played him code talker recordings. Kilumia heard Navajo words, but in meaningless combinations. The turtle is attacking the iron fish. The hummingbird carries eggs. When he couldn't translate, interrogators accused him of lying. The torture escalated systematically over months. Water torture, beatings, hanging by arms. 4 hours. In winter 1943, they forced him to stand naked in snow until his feet froze to the ground. They starved him to 90, offering food for translations. Through everything, Kamiya could only repeat the truth. He understood the words, but not their military meaning. A Japanese intelligence report from May 1943 documented their frustration. The prisoner appears native to the mystery language but cannot comprehend messages. Assessment either extraordinary resistance or enemy use is specialized. Code within native language requiring specific training. The second assessment was correct. Even fluent Navajo speakers couldn't understand without training. Kamiya survived 3.5 years of captivity. His inability to help convincing Japanese intelligence they faced something unprecedented. By late 1943, they largely abandoned attempts to decode Navajo transmissions. Success at Guadalcanal led to immediate expansion. Major General Alexander Vandergrift wrote, "The Navajo communicators have proven invaluable. Their transmissions are faster than any encoding device and absolutely secure." A formal code talker school at Camp Pendleton began processing classes every 8 weeks. By war's end, between 375 and 420 Navajo Marines had served as code talkers across all 6 Marine divisions. Training was unlike anything in Marine Corps history. Recruits practiced in soundproof booths while instructors introduced battlefield noises. They transmitted wearing gas masks while running through exhaustion. Thomas B.E., who enlisted at 15, described, "They pushed us beyond possible. Lives depended on our accuracy." The code evolved continuously. New technologies required new vocabulary. The atomic bomb became a yashi, metal egg. Kamikaze pilots were neti, death wind. Each addition was logical to Navajo speakers, but incomprehensible to outsiders. By mid-1943, Japanese intelligence dedicated substantial resources to breaking the code. The Imperial Navy's 4th Section assigned 30 Krypton analysts exclusively to these transmissions. Captain Yoshiro Tanaka tried innovative approaches: musical analysis for tonal patterns, comparison to Native American recordings, consultation with scholars who studied in America. They developed special recording equipment to slow transmissions without distorting pitch. They created visual sound representations using oscilloscopes. They applied statistical analysis to sound frequencies and patterns. Lieutenant Commander Maso Yamada later revealed they identified certain patterns, probable call signs, correlation between message length and operation complexity, but without understanding words, these provided minimal value. Japanese forces received orders to capture Marine communication personnel alive. Rewards of 10,000 yen, 10 years' salary, were offered for code talker equipment or materials. Several close calls occurred, but no code talker was ever captured with their equipment intact. The Central Pacific Campaign demonstrated the code talker's strategic importance. At Tarawa in November 1943, 6 code talkers maintained communications through 76 hours of brutal combat. Lloyd Oliver transmitted continuously for 48 hours, coordinating naval gunfire despite constant shelling. During the Marianas Campaign, 24 code talkers operated around the clock at Saipan. Lieutenant Commander Takashi Hirakawa had decoded conventional communications to anticipate the invasion, but once Marines landed, tactical intelligence disappeared. Colonel Takashi Saito noted, commanders felt abandoned without the intelligence they depended upon. At Peleliu, code talker Jimmy King transmitted for 6 hours during a counterattack after his partner was killed. He coordinated artillery from 3 battalions, sending 40 messages without error under direct fire. The battle for Uwima represented the Code Talkers' greatest contribution. Major Howard Connor coordinated the entire initial assault through Navajo Code. 6 Code Talkers working in teams maintained continuous communication throughout the invasion's critical first 48 hours. General Tadamaki Kuribayashi had prepared for 2 years, constructing an underground fortress with 11 miles of tunnels. His defensive plan relied on intercepting American communications to trigger counterattacks. This plan failed completely. Over 48 hours, the 6 Code Talkers sent and received over 800 messages without error. They coordinated 30,000 Marines landing, naval gunfire from 100 ships, close air support, enemy positions, medical evacuations, supplies, and tactical orders, all while under constant fire. Major Connor later testified, were it not for the Navajos, the Marines would never have taken Uwima. During the first 48 hours, I had 6 Navajo radio nets operating around the clock. They sent and received over 800 messages without an error. The entire operation was directed by Navajo Code. Colonel Shigo Hayashi reported to Kuribayashi that American codes remained unbreakable. Artillery requests completed in 20 seconds through Navajo would have taken 30 minutes? Conventionally, the contrast between eliminating enemy positions and losing your own could mean everything. During the Battle of Okinawa, 35 Navajo Code Talkers coordinated the largest offensive in the Pacific, 183,000 troops over the course of 82 days. Japanese forces attempted radio interference and tried to imitate the voices they heard, but they were never able to reproduce the tonal features of the Navajo language. Lieutenant Hiroshi Miyamoto's attempts to mimic Navajo speech sounded, according to Code Talker Alfred Newman, like someone gargling while trying to talk. On August 14, 1945, Code Talker Teddy Draper sent one of the most important transmissions of the entire conflict. Nihima ita jini ade nil, the Japanese have surrendered. The message was delivered in Navajo before being relayed through standard channels, an appropriate conclusion to the Code Talkers' wartime service. After the war, American interrogators learned the full scope of Japanese attempts and their total lack of success. Lieutenant General Seizo Arisu, Japan's chief intelligence officer, admitted, "We never broke the Marine Code. We decoded Army, Air Force, and diplomatic messages, but the Marine Tactical Code remained completely secure." Captain Yasuji Kawamoto added, "We recorded thousands of messages. Our best linguists studied them for 3 years. Nothing helped. It was our greatest cryptographic defeat." In 1944, Japanese analysts noticed tonal patterns suggesting a Native American language. They asked Germany for assistance, but wartime barriers and German unfamiliarity prevented any progress. Colonel Masao Yamada confessed, "Our inability to read Marine communications cost thousands of lives. Every Marine operation after 1942 was unknown to us until the moment it began." Major Hiroshi Tanaka, a survivor of Iwo Jima, described its emotional effect. "We couldn't comprehend their speech. It made us feel primitive, defeated before the fighting even started." The end of the war didn't remove the Code Talkers' burden. Their program stayed classified in case it was needed during the Cold War. When they returned home, they were not allowed to speak about their service. They returned to states that still denied them voting rights until 1948 in New Mexico and Arizona, and 1957 in Utah. Many hotels and restaurants rejected them. They were heroes who could not speak of their heroism. Chester Nez, the last survivor of the original 29, who died in 2014, wrote, "We were warriors who helped win the war, but we weren't allowed to tell anyone. The burden was heavy. Many found healing through traditional ceremonies. The enemy way. Ceremony purified warriors from warfare's spiritual contamination." Dan Erkey explained, "We had used our language to direct death. We needed it for healing. The ceremonies reminded us our language was sacred." In 1968, the program was declassified. The first recognition came in 1969 at a 4th Marine Division reunion. President Reagan declared August 14, 1982 as National Navajo Code Talkers Day. The most significant recognition came July 26, 2001, when President Bush presented congressional gold medals to the original 29 in the Capitol Rotunda. Only 5 originals survived to attend. Bush declared, "Today we honor 29 Native Americans who gave their country a service only they could give." Chester responded, "We were ordinary men, given an extraordinary task. We used our sacred language to help win the war." While Navajos are most famous, 14 other tribes provided code talkers. Chow pioneered the concept in World War I. In World War II, 17 Comanche code talkers served in Europe, landing at D-Day. Hopi, Cherokee, Lakota, and others contributed their languages. The 2008 Code Talkers Recognition Act acknowledged all tribes. John Brown Jr. observed, "They told us our language was no good. Then they needed it to win the war." The code demonstrated Native American language's sophistication. Code talkers modernized Navajo in real time, creating grammatical constructions and adapting metaphors for military purposes. The agglutinative nature allowed complex ideas in single words. What required paragraphs in English became brief Navajo phrases. Dr. William Morgan noted, "They proved indigenous languages aren't primitive. They showed Navajo could express anything from ceremonies to warfare." The Navajo Code introduced cultural encryption security through linguistic barriers no mathematics could overcome. This influenced post-war intelligence operations. The concept remains relevant as quantum computing threatens mathematical encryption. Colonel David Hatch evaluated, "They achieved something unique. A code never broken, never compromised. It proved human linguistic capability could exceed mechanical encryption." In the 1980s, Japanese scholarship examined their failure. Professor Tao Yoshikawa revealed 30 CRYP analysts worked exclusively on these transmissions for 2 years, consulting multiple universities. Captain Minoru Yamada revealed, "We knew it was Native American by late 1943, but couldn't identify which language." Lieutenant Commander Shigeru Fukumoto admitted, "Using a native language was so simple, so elegant, we never considered it." In the 1990s, photographer Kenji Kawano documented code talker survivors. His exhibitions in Tokyo and Hiroshima introduced Japanese audiences to the story. Code talker Albert Smith told Japanese audiences, "We were both warriors. My language helped defeat you, but now helps us understand each other. In 2010, the Japanese Association of Intelligence Studies Symposium featured Admiral Hiroaki Arb. The Navajo Code represents perfect encryption. We had Asia's best coders yet were completely defeated. Chester Nez, last of the original 29, died June 4, 2014. Today, only 2 code talkers survive from the approximately 400 who served. Thomas H. B. and Peter McDonald, not from the original 29, but crucial to the code's operational success. Peter McDonald continued speaking at age 96. We showed America's strength comes from diversity. Our different languages and cultures make us stronger. The Navajo language, once suppressed, is now recognized as strategically important. Federal funding references the code. Talker story. Young Native Americans study ancestral languages with new pride. Dr. Jennifer Dennedale observed, Code talkers transformed how Native Americans see themselves and how America sees Native Americans. They proved our languages aren't museum pieces, but living resources. The Navajo Code talkers achieved military history's most remarkable feat, creating an unbreakable code that defied Japanese intelligence throughout World War II. Between 375 and 420 Navajo Marines served, transmitting tens of thousands of messages without error under combat conditions. The deeper significance lies in what they represented. American Indians used their native language, which the government had tried to eradicate, to defend that nation. Young men from marginalized communities provided capabilities sophisticated allies couldn't match. Japanese failure wasn't just tactical defeat, but fundamental blindness. They prepared for American technology and codes, not American diversity. Languages and cultures they couldn't access. The empire proclaiming racial superiority was defeated partly by that diversity. Lieutenant General Irijui's admission that Japan never cracked the code used by the Marines acknowledges challenging an opponent whose strength came from incomprehensible sources. The code talkers embodied in America Japan's ideology couldn't accommodate. They proved America's greatest strength wasn't industrial capacity, but human diversity. Linguistic variety became strategic advantage. The Navajo language boarding schools tried to eliminate became key to Pacific victory. Today, as the last code talkers pass into history, their legacy endures. A language once suppressed is now taught with honor. Native American veterans are acknowledged for serving in the military at the highest per capita levels. The idea that diversity strengthens national security is now widely accepted. The voices that spoke Navajo across the Pacific battlefields carried a message far greater than the war itself. America's true power comes from many peoples and many languages unified in mission, yet enriched by their differences. The unbroken code demonstrates that diversity is not a weakness, but a source of strength, something to protect, value, and use in the defense of freedom. Japanese intelligence officers, who failed to decipher it, ultimately understood this truth more deeply than anyone. Their inability revealed a lesson that goes beyond warfare. Some codes cannot be solved, not because of mathematical difficulty, but because they arise from the immeasurable depth of human culture. The code talkers transmitted messages the Japanese never cracked. Yet their most powerful message was universal: diversity creates resilience, culture generates strength, indigenous knowledge has modern importance. The young Navajo men who used their sacred language first as a weapon and later as a symbol of peace prove that America's strongest encryption is its diversity, unbreakable because it is rooted in the vast range of human experience and wisdom. The unbroken code still lives today. Every time a native child proudly speaks their ancestral language, every time a nation recognizes the contributions of minority communities, every time we understand that our differences make us stronger together. The Code Talkers showed that our differences are strengths to be honored, lasting evidence that many voices, many cultures, and many languages, harmonized yet distinct, form the unbreakable code of freedom itself.